from May 1st.
I would move that we approve the May 1st minutes.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
aye. Catherine, you okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. We're good to go.
All right, on the action items for the biological opinion, I did talk to ODOT, I'm sorry, through email. We did close out all the responses. We believe that right now, we don't have any additional comments on it. They're working towards getting the biological opinion done, so we have another check-in on the 24th with the executive, with Rod from ODOT and Cindy from FHWA, so we'll give you an update after that meeting on how things are moving, but
We're hoping at that time we'll start the clock.
well, I got corrected from Cindy that the clock technically has already started back in 2020 when they actually accepted the BA. So there really is not a restart of the clock, but they reinforced that it was a priority and that everyone was working towards getting the biological opinion done.
So can you remind me of what the process is from here forward?
Right now, as soon as they have no additional questions, they are in the process of writing the biological opinion, which Oregon is doing based on our biological assessment. So as they were writing the different sections, they had some questions about our biological opinion. We've responded to all those questions. We think they're done with any additional questions that they have. So the next step would be them finishing the biological opinion. When that is complete, there's a roughly 45-day legal review that happens with NOAA and NEMS. And then if there's nothing that comes out of that, then they will release the biological opinion.
And so when are we sure that there are no further questions? Is that really not until they release it?
Not till they release it. Yeah, not till they get completely done with the biological opinion and turn it over to their legal review.
But
And then I think we still could get questions from the legal review
Right.
while they do their review, so.
This is on the board too, if he has anything.
Yeah, Dennis, I don't know if you have anything other to add on that. I don't know if you heard what I said,
Yeah, I heard Mike. No, I think that was a fair summary.
so. Reach it.
So are we feeling better about this?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Dennis, do you feel better about it?
I feel much better about it. Yes.
So I tell you what, I will feel really good when it's done.
Yeah, well, it's,
We all will.
So on that, I'm gonna skip down to before we start into the authority topics, the ODOT IGA. Me and Kevin met with Rob Watman, who is our point of contact for the local programs. With ODOT, we went through the invoicing, we went through the scope. They understand the concerns. We are not the only group that has concerns about how they put together their scopes and how they put together their invoices, but it is the ability of their current systems that they use. That's what they can produce. We did talk to Rob about maybe trying to give us a little more information related to the scope. He said we actually are getting more information than most get, even with what we did receive. But their invoicing component and the way they input their time, their system is pretty archaic. They know it's pretty archaic. It does not have the ability to produce much in the way of tracking other than the names versus the codes. Rob does review those, as well as us looking at them when we get the names to verify it's at least people that we're familiar with being on the project. But generally it's basically that's as good as we're gonna get. So what we revised the memo to go ahead and move forward with the 100% of the amount that they were asking for, and that's what I would say, our recommendation would be to move forward with that. And if you have any other questions, I'll try to answer them, but we sat and went through it with Rob and Kevin. I don't know if you have anything to add, but he said, I understand. He said, we get this from all kinds of people, and he said, it is what we have today, and it is how we do business today.
If you recall, the recommendation was for 50% of budget. And when I asked Rob about that, he said it'll take longer to reconfigure the scope of work for 50%. So, anyway, this is something that the Port Commission had been struggling with for 3 or 4 years before HGTV.
I've seen this elsewhere on other projects with the, with the state and federal governments and. While I don't like it, I don't think we can do much about it.
I think to do something about it, you would have to take it to a higher level outside of the project. Because it's more of a ODOT system issue, not a project specific issue.
I would say it's an attitude, not a system issue. There's an attitude that no one's tracking details, no one needs these details. And I'm not happy with that, but I get the fact that we're not dropping the bus here.
It's a side issue. Not really germane to a vote. Is that it's interesting. If you're on the contractor side, you're expected to do this.
Right.
If you're on the owner side, no, you're not.
Right.
And there's something wrong with that picture, and they're both coming from taxpayer money.
Right.
I feel better now, so.
Well, I do too.
So I guess, is everyone okay? Well,
Yes,
can we move forward with? Authorizing the 100% or recommended to the port that they move forward with the 100%.
So let's go down through. Marla, you're okay?
Yeah.
How about you? Okay.
we have no choice.
Yeah, we don't.
Don't have to like it.
You didn't give us an option, right?
Mayor Catherine? Are you okay?
Yes, I'm okay. I actually am having a hard time hearing everything you guys are saying. I don't know if there's a way to get the mics closer to everyone, but I'm following along.
Okay. Yeah. We'll try and speak up a little. Okay, so we're gonna take it to the Port Commission tomorrow night with a recommendation. Go ahead and sign the full amount.
Yeah. And they have the memo.
One side issue, maybe for somebody to think about. Once we get federal grant money, are we under FAR? And does that ripple back to this? And how is that gonna play under FAR? Or are we gonna have to try and fund this out of a non-FAR source?
We can follow up with FHWA on that. And I'm sure they've had projects where they've had to do that. So
Yeah.
we can follow up on it.
Just make sure that we're playing by the rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so kind of the big topic is the new authority. Now that we've signed all the CFAs, now we're in a transition period. We are working on a transition plan. There's a meeting on Wednesday of this week. If you want to attend that meeting, let me know and we'll add you to the meeting invite. It is really just to discuss the list of activities that are in the CFA that need to happen by the authority, and then just going through and kind of outlining, what's priority, what we think is priority, make sure we have them all captured. And just make sure that list is together. And then to build on that, there's a couple key things that we want to get some feedback on as far as how we want to progress them between now and July 1st. And we need to just see, are there things we can advance that people are comfortable advancing, or what do we want to just wait on till we have the full authority? So
Before, could we have a quick discussion on where each of the counties are and when you expect the counties to have the board named?
Hey, sorry to interrupt. You guys muted yourselves, so we can't hear you.
Thank you, Catherine.
How about now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, I'll start over. So Hood River County, we have our Board of Commissioners meeting today at 4:30. And it is my expectation that we will open the nomination process formally. But we've already had nominations, but we will formally open the nomination process today. And at our next meeting, a month from now, we will have the process closed and we will interview people and select commissioners. So that would be my expectation.
So
June
14th
or
or
the first 14th to 21st.
12th of the,
Now you're making me open a calendar.
12th is a Monday.
I think it's the 19th. Yeah, Board of Commissioners meeting, 19th, probably the 20th because it's Juneteenth. So.
okay. And
probably the
so,
20th.
so you, at that time, you select which ones you want to interview.
No,
Or
we
you'll have
would,
that done
we
before.
would interview them at that meeting.
Okay,
We schedule a work session before, so
Okay.
at 4 o'clock, we would interview people and then we usually would select them at 6 o'clock unless we don't
okay,
like what we've seen.
okay. How about you?
And so we've, I've asked staff to prepare the letters to the cities to ask for nominations. I'm gonna bring it up tomorrow to open up the nominations and then we'll do the same thing for a month. I'll leave it open.
We're gonna get a day ahead of you? How'd we do that?
You always do that.
I thought you were way ahead of us.
Okay, so that means we would have the names about 2 weeks before July 1st.
Yes, and yeah. That's correct.
Okay.
But actually had someone contact me over this weekend who said they were interested.
Good.
Chief, did you say what date? Do you have a date specific on? June 20th, most likely for the county.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be the 20th.
That would be ours too. It'd be June 20th.
Okay.
Okay, go with your next one.
All right, perfect. So one of the next things is, and these are not in order of like importance, the IGA with the port, and Kevin can expand on it. I know they've started that process, so. if there's anything
Yes,
you wanna
real
add.
quickly, Bill Oley, who's works outside of council, is looking at the CFA. There's the transition plan. I think it was Exhibit C within the CFA. He's pulling from that and will create a draft IGA. We should be getting that initial draft sometime this week. So certainly be able to share it with the board by the next meeting.
Yeah, is there? Do we want to circulate that? What's the process we want to use for the IGA going forward to get it approved and reviewed?
It has to be approved by the commission that hasn't been created yet, but there's nothing wrong with circulating it.
Okay.
It's a public document, that no reason not to let people see what, what's been presented, but the commission will need to have its own attorney and have an attorney review it and have to make policy and legal decisions on it.
Okay, so we, as soon as it's ready, we'll get it out then to everyone to start at least a draft review of it.
So is it your thought that this document, we'll do as much as we can as the bi-state and perhaps have both of the county legal counsel take a look at it?
Possible, I guess it's not their. My experience, lawyers have a lot of trouble reviewing something in a different context,
Yeah.
right? They review it for their organization.
Right.
So I think whatever we do, we can, the bi-state working group can read it, can make a recommendation. But at the end of the day, this board has to be stood up and has to make their own decisions.
Yeah, and part of that is a couple of the other questions I know you're gonna ask is, getting legal counsel set up.
So let's pause on that one for a second. Two of the big ones are legal service and liability insurance. I know I sent something out on a schedule on legal services. Where there were some questions about how far we take that. Can we shortlist? What do we want to do? What would you all like to do as far as legal services? And if you want some additional legal information, I think we could get Bill Oley to come in if you need it to kind of explain what we're allowed to do or what he thinks we could do. is there is some understanding that we could actually bring legal counsel in before the authority is actually created. But if there's concern about that, we just want to talk through, how do we want to work forward with the legal counsel? Do we want to take nominations for a certain period of time? Do we need to advertise that in some way? Does there need to be a review panel? Who's, all those things were things that came to my mind as far as how we want to move this forward.
I think it's really critical that we create an arm's length distance between the board and this new commission. And unless there's a compelling deadline related argument, I don't see a benefit to this. Insurance is something that you can line up in a matter of days, and the board's not going to be doing anything to create any liability in the meantime. In terms of interviewing and hiring an attorney, I don't, even if it's by state working group recommending to the port commission to hire somebody, that feels to me like we already have the experience of a port hired staff writing legal documents which are not to our benefit as the bridge commission. So I just can't go there.
What I was thinking of is slightly different.
Okay.
Is for legal counsel, take a couple of us and go do some interviewing. And I personally think for this first year, we need to have somebody close by. Not in Salem or Olympia. We need counsel that's close by that can actually attend the meetings and guide us, as we set this thing up. So what I was thinking is expanding the list that we've got to get some other candidates, like perhaps Port of Cascade Locks, the Dalles, whatever else we want to do, but somewhat within the region. And then we go ahead and we do a kind of a short list and a recommendation from this body, not through the port, this body, and we do nothing with it until the new authority stands up. But we give them a document that says, you're going to do what you want to do. Here's a leg up for you.
I think I echo Arthur's sentiment. I think as many ways as possible where we can make it clear that this new commission, this is all of the work that they need to be doing. There's a likelihood that some of the current bi-state working group might be seated commissioners, and we already factored in a transition of, support or guidance from existing commissioners. But I actually would say we're better served. There is no new bridge. So it seems like July 1, yes, this authority exists, but they have to get their feet under themselves. And I think we will be better off long-term by letting whomever that new board is get through these processes. I'm just concerned if there's too much, and I think it's well intended. We're trying to give them a head start, but that could be perceived as this group saying, do exactly what we think is best for the bridge. And if we're really trying to recruit some new faces to serve, we need to honor that commitment that some people might be giving and bringing forward and wait for them to get to the table. And unless we're looking at this authority to have to meet a deadline of a submission date for these applications, that's literally like beginning of July, and that's not possible unless this is ready, I think we pull back and say, they start July 1 and we focus our efforts on the things that we need to keep moving, which seems like the grant application for the current cycle and the advocacy that we're doing with our houses and at the federal level.
When along that line, I know the apps haven't been released yet for the big money for the feds. When did we submit last year?
It was around July, August timeframe. The MPDG grant just changed yesterday or today that the June is when they're expecting the NOFO. It used to say summer, now it says June, but they have not released the NOFO yet, but we've heard June 1st is going to be the
And
date.
which one is that for?
That's for them for rural and mega. That's the 200 million. That's the big one.
So they're gonna release the apps in June. When is the due date?
I don't know what the due date will be after that. It's probably going to be July, August, about 2 months.
It's usually about 2 months. This is Kerry,
Am I on about?
about 2 months. And so I'm actually thinking it'll probably be early August when the MPDG is released, and then I expect to see a NOFO for the BIP program in August and probably late fall submittal on that one.
And we're in process of taking the old
Sure.
already, so that we'll be ready when it comes
So
out.
you're not, nothing is stopping you and Carrier from.
Well, no,
working
no,
on
no,
it, right?
no, what I'm after
Correct.
is if, I want to know how quick after July 1 we gotta submit. And if we gotta submit in a couple of weeks, how are we gonna get our technical or legal review of that?
Well, is the new authority the submitting party for this? I was always
Great.
operating the assumption we were preparing for the authority to start being the submitting entity in the 2024 cycle. Because of the uncertainty of timeframes for 23, like if we've already submitted a few at a federal level, which we have, wouldn't we stay consistent through this entire season of application?
You
Is
wouldn't
there-
have to, but
Okay.
the new authority has to get their federal numbers together in order to be certified, is that the right word, certified agency, federal agency.
Number of the EIN.
Yeah, your EIU and STAN.gov stuff, and to do that, you need an address. Bank account and signatures and some things to happen, so. The way the CFA is written is that all the current grants stay with the port, new grants will be to the authority. And we can amend the application, so if the application goes in August. Anytime before the award, we could amend who the applicant person was on there, so we could. If we don't have it ready by the time it goes in August and we get our numbers after that, we could make an amendment to add the authority to those grant applications.
So this is not a critical path, is what I'm hearing.
It's not something that has to be done July 1st, no.
Yeah, getting together, hiring lawyers, arranging insurance, doing all of those things, I consider that a team building exercise. I'd like to see everyone. I know there'll be some cross contamination, cross pollination between this group and that group, but there will be other people involved also, and I'd like to see that they're not being thought of as afterthoughts, as, you just don't worry your pretty little heads, we'll tell you what to do here. I'd like them to be actively involved.
But you,
As long as we're not, the new group is gonna be making any major decisions that involve money, considering they don't have any money. I'm not too worried. My first one would be worried about, potential liability and director's insurance and bonding and all that. But considering they have no money and they have no decision making, there's not a whole lot they can do to cause too much trouble, I would hope. So with that, I have no problem moving to July. I think the only thing that would be nice is, if we're gonna work on this IGA right now, the new organization, it would be nice to have that kind of fleshed out, which I think we can review in between now and then. And sure, if they want to hire their first attorney and have that attorney review it, I just don't see signing that until
Yeah.
legal counsel has reviewed it. So it'll push that whole IGA process off, but I think we're all working in good faith, so I'm not worried about it.
One of the first things on money, just so everyone's aware, is
speak
the,
up.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
one of the first things on money is the Washington move ahead money. That money could potentially be available July 1st. I don't know what it'll take to receive that. We can do some follow-up to figure that out. But the new authority could have $15 million theoretically, July 1st.
That's the first installment.
That
of
would be the first biennium payment. So
But I think, Debbie can set up the accounts and receive that. And it's a segregated account, comes over here. I'm not too concerned about that one.
and I don't think it's a major issue for anything. It's just, when we talk about them not having funding, the new authority could have $15 million July 1st.
Catherine, what's your thoughts on all this?
Yeah, I agree that we should wait to hire legal. Or not we, that the entity can decide who their legal representation is going to be once they're formed. So I'm a little bit more in line with what you're saying, Mike, about perhaps doing some legwork ahead of time to help narrow the field down. So that they don't have to start from scratch and figure out who those folks could be that they could pick from, but I don't think we need to go ahead and make a recommendation and hire somebody in the interim.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree. Don't hire anybody. But where I was coming from, and it was just as a help to them. We do some legwork and they can throw it all out, start all over. It's their choice, but if they wanted to do something else, they've got this homework done, and you could always limit it to 6 months or to a year. And just take that off their workload and pay attention, but I'm fine waiting. The only thing that I would maybe suggest we do, do you guys know Bill Oley?
I do not know.
He is,
I've heard of him.
he is a guy that I have learned to trust. And he's a guy that you can ask questions of, and he'll have a great discussion, common sense discussion back with you, so. I would recommend that we bring him in maybe the next meeting and make sure that what we're doing. We've thought through, and he doesn't see any of these issues that really needs to be put in place. Very shortly after July 1.
Wasn't that the question you asked him? And so. I
Well,
thought we had an answer on
the
that.
question was more, what can we do prior to July first? And he feels like you could get insurance on board before July first, and you could bring on an attorney before July first.
The main example that he shared with me regarding bringing the attorney on early would be like if the three of us were gonna start an S corp, we would hire an attorney before that S corp gets created. And so you work through all the paperwork, and then that first meeting after it's formed, that individual coordinates the election of the officers, and that person may or may not continue on with the S corp very long.
Yeah, but he was not asked the question of. Do you have concerns about not bringing in an attorney ahead of July 1st?
No, I don't think it was quite framed.
So it's
that-
framed in the opposite direction of, is there a way that you could do that? And his answer was, yes, there is a way.
Yes, correct.
I'm more interested
Well, that's
in
the
the
other
other one
question.
is, what are we missing here that can come back and bite us?
Well, who's this individual? I can just.
So Bill Oley, he's been the port's outside counsel, so if you remember Jake's Sharp
Mhm.
was the port's inside counsel for 40+ years. But if there were ever interesting little things where we needed outside expertise, we leaned on Schwabi Williamson, and Bill Oley is the port's outside counsel.
I really just think we're better served. This is a new supposedly independent agency. Let's honor that. I think it benefits all of us to not, even if we have some of those relationships from our existing entities. The perception it gives is that there's a favoritism or a bias at play about the guidance we're getting. And I just think that's an area we don't need to get into, and we've got other things to work on. And if we don't, then great, let's in the meeting and enjoy the sunshine. But I think we're burdening ourselves with things we don't need to be getting into, and this new entity will be better served by honoring their autonomy from the rest of us.
This is a problem of the administrative class.
Yeah.
No, I understand.
So I guess
What's
for-
funny is,
The only other question is, I guess, to get the EIN and the SAMS number, I guess we would need to know who the presiding officer for the new bridge authority would be.
Yeah, well, all the formation documents have to be completed and signed and all that before I can apply for an EIN on their behalf.
So that'll have to be after this new board. Well,
'Cause you need a chair, you
if
need
the
a list,
names are,
a presiding
is there a real
officer.
push to have that number shortly after July 1? Or can,
you have to get that number in order to receive any federal funds, but you can't get that number until you have all the corporate documents. And I happen to be 3.5 months into a SAMS process now for another organization, and they're completely screwed up right now. So I wouldn't expect that to happen quickly. So I could just give up on that thought.
Okay.
It's not gonna happen.
The only thing I would point out is that And we don't know about the Washington money. We do need to find out about that. You can't open a bank account, so you have an EIN. And so the court will have to continue to hold, even if the money is coming to the bi-state working group, or bi-state bridge authority, sorry. The court will have to continue to hold that money if.
Right, but EIN you can get in 15 minutes, a SAM
Right,
number can take
Right.
anywhere from
Yeah.
days to months is my experience.
Okay, so it sounds like, at least for what we just talked about, we're just gonna wait until the new board's up to make the decision.
And just
that's
as a quick aside, because Mayor Keith was here, the first mayor of Hood River. Left Hood River, moved to White Salmon, and then a couple of years later, they decided to form White Salmon. He wound up becoming the first mayor of White Salmon. And I found the letters that he wrote to the folks in Hood River asking to borrow their foundational and formational agreement. Documents, because he wasn't sure, he couldn't remember how to do it. This was like 8-10 years later, and he couldn't remember how to do it. And he would say, hey, can I borrow? Can you send over your books? I promise I'll take care of them. And he apparently borrowed the charter and all of that stuff from Hood River so he could redo everything he had done 8-10 years ago.
See, and we're still untangled.
Still gonna get this.
Okay. keep
All
going,
right,
Michael.
okay, so just last thing on that, we will go ahead and still collect like kind of a PDF book for the authority members of kind of the guiding documents and put that together, and we'll have that for them when they're ready. Right now, it's looking like if we go with a second and fourth week meetings, July 10th would be the first meeting of the new authority. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yeah, because you got to
Give you a little bit of time.
And everybody's gonna be gone anyway.
Yeah, so, okay, just want to make sure on that. And then one other question related to that, June 19th. Would you all want to run the June 19th meeting as a trial run of the authority just in process? So use like an agenda for because we run this group meeting, nothing like the authority meeting will need to run. Do you want to run that and just see if there's any comments, issues, things on the 19th or no?
I mean, I don't know, we're all used to running our.
You are.
meetings and there's all requirements, and I think,
Okay,
you know, once that group forms, I would imagine if there are some from this group, they can elect their chair to be someone with the experience.
yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to make.
So
open
we
it
get
up.
at least one more meeting.
Relax. And then the other question was, and I totally just- Oh, training, thank you. Public records training. Do you want a public records training course for the new authority members? Do you want us to set something up for that? And can that be
Any of them
before?
who have not been on a public body before would definitely be well served by doing that. I think it would be great to offer that opportunity, but maybe we should wait and see. Well, also the Washington folks don't know Oregon.
Yeah, I was
laws,
gonna say, I
so-
think everybody, because it'll be Oregon.
So can we do that since we'll know who the authority members are on theoretically the 20th? Can we do that between the 20th and the 1st?
I think you could certainly offer it. It depends on how available people are.
Okay,
The 19th is a state and county holiday. So I don't know.
Washington also.
Is it Washington State also? Yeah.
Yeah.
So do we want to move that meeting to the 20th?
Yeah.
okay. You want to do it, the port meeting is on the 20th, I think.
Yes.
So do we want to just do it right before the port meeting? From 2 to 4? I'd be on Tuesday with that overlap other people.
I know county meetings meetings move from Monday to Tuesday.
But that would still fit for you. You'd go.
That works fine for us. Yeah.
I think, Jake, you have meetings on Tuesdays. If we move this one from 19th to the 20th from 2 to 4, is that gonna mess you up?
It's gonna be on my commissioner day, but I'll find a way to do it.
Is that okay?
Or do you want to just do the following Monday?
Or we can
Like
do the
slide
next-
it a week?
We could move it a week, yeah.
So if we did it a week, that would be the 26th,
Yeah,
and then we'd have.
Do you have any contracts or anything that you?
Yeah, the benefit to doing that is that then because by then. Our county at least will have selected our commissioners, and you probably will have also, so then they could actually, people could know if they were selected and could show up.
So move it to the 26th would make more sense. Yeah, it'd be hard for me to be making the decision and be in the meeting at the same time.
it's right to have it on the rights. We gotta move it to. the 6th.
So it sounds like the 26th.
Is that gonna work for you guys? The
Yeah,
26th.
Yeah, we will have to make an amendment. We will have to extend our current owner's contract for a month. Because we'll bring our amendment forward to you on the 26th. It won't get to the port till July 5th or 6th. And our contract ends on the 30th. So we can work with the port to do a 1 month extension.
Well, can you get the amendment stuff to the working group on the fifth?
On June 5th. We could try to do that if you want. But that means Eric and everybody would have to review it prior to the 5th. That might be pushing it.
Yeah, the sooner we get that to the working group.
Yes.
I mean, we could theoretically, if there was, if they reviewed it on, like, the 20th. If the working group reviewed it, had 2 weeks to review it, it came in on the 5th.
Yeah.
We could work with ARA and hopefully come back on the 20th.
So this is the 5th of June.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is June. Yeah, 5th of June. and
We
then-
turned it in on the 5th of June. Then on the 20th of June at the Port Commission meeting, they could take action on it.
They could, or if you needed more time, then we could do a special meeting
To do an extension.
to get it.
Well, if you-
Before the end of June.
Or do you wanna
I would
just-
say if we can't get it by this body. From the 5th to the 20th. You're probably not gonna get it by the 22nd or 29th. I would say we try and push that. We reviewed it, given you comments on the 20th.
So everything's ready to go for the Port Commission on the 20th.
So
If we slid,
if we don't have a meeting, how are we approving it? I have no problem with us putting it out in email, seeing if there are any issues, and if there are not, then we can have a special meeting by Zoom, just get a quorum of us present to approve it. Is that what you're saying? I think I heard you use the term special meeting, so is that what you meant?
No, I was thinking that, well, first, you guys have. Unique situations for meetings right now. because
Right.
You're not.
We're not governed by the
Right,
rules.
so. We, the port would need to be able to. Based on your recommendation, approve the contract at their meeting on the 20th.
Right, so we need to have a quorum of us approve it before the 20th, so the Port Commission can do that, so why can't we have a Zoom-based special meeting just to do that? Schedule for 5 minutes and. Get that out of the way, and then have our actual full meeting on the 26th.
There you go.
Is that okay? That works. If that works for everybody, we can do that.
Just as long as it's available by email, so anyone who has an issue has a chance to review it.
So are we going to approve, assuming all the numbers are, good? Are we approving a 3-year plan or are we approving the first of a 3-year?
What we had talked about was approving a 3-year, I'm gonna say the words wrong, Debbie can correct the wording. 3-year budget, but allocating the first year. And then every year you'll allocate the new amount. But you would be approving a 3-year contract with a,
Authorizing or releasing the first year.
yes.
Is allocation same as appropriation? Is that what we're talking about?
He meant appropriation.
Oh, okay.
I'll find it. You know, that's good. I have the wrong words in there. You know,
So you do a 3-year budget with an unappropriation clause, and so you have to appropriate every year.
Right.
I like that.
Is that? Okay. All right, we'll plan on that. Okay. All right, I think that was everything, but anybody else have anything authority, future authority related that we need to discuss?
Just, is there any issue with the address of this building also serving as the address for the? Right, because we have to get an address.
You put an address in
Why?
and then change it.
why do you need one before July 1? Just guys, I just think, we're
Yeah,
Like
sorry, that
getting
should have been
a
on the
little
list. Office location or address
eager.
location. Yeah,
Because I think there isn't, I'm trying to think of some of that.
weren't we thinking about? Yeah, I just,
Give us a little while to kick that one around.
okay. We need to pick an address that sooner than later, I think is the point. If we can. I mean, I guess technically you could do it July 1st, but I think it has to be on some of the.
Now, the
documentation.
issue
a
is,
physical address or a mailing
Well,
address?
if they're putting everything off until.
They would need it till
July,
July,
we don't
then,
need
right?
it until
Okay.
then, yeah.
So yeah, you could make the office
That's
location
gonna
in
make
July.
money. If they get-
So, Okay,
Wasn't there another one besides just the address or?
the physical office location, but
Those are the two ones,
Yeah.
mailing and physical.
yeah, do we want to?
And
I guess
physical office location could be in either state, correct?
It can be in either state and
So,
But
at
remember,
some point. there
but
will be-
remember, if we take it other than where it is now, we, the project's gonna pay for that.
Well, so it just.
what do you mean by that?
Rent,
You're-
utilities and so on.
Sure,
Right now, the port is paying for that in kind.
HNTV.
well, there is no authority
So-
yet to be
Commissioner.
needing a space until July 1.
Right.
And they will need to find a location and take on some of those costs, but also maybe to their benefit for.
We're paying for rent now
Right, through
through the grant, so it's.
Through
it's
an
one of-
aid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the grants are reimbursing the port for office space now.
I guess it could be, it could be your address.
it's gonna become. an
Yeah, but it's just, the way you said that, it was like there was no payment for
No.
rent right now. There
The
is,
agreement with the port is your office space. Is covered by the port and our grants don't see any of that cost.
the grants are reimbursing for office space.
How much
now.
are we paying for the office space?
I don't know.
$2,500.
Thank you.
I thought that's what it was, but I won't say for sure.
That was not the agreement. Okay,
See, this is why we need arm's length.
Yeah,
We'll get it figured out. It's gonna work out fine.
Okay, so we'll table that till sometime between now and July or after July.
Just none of this stuff is hard.
It just needs to be done.
I got it.
Yeah. We just, if there's things we can get ahead of, we're,
I know you'd like to
Check
start
on
turning the crank earlier, but
yeah, I just.
we'll turn the crank July 1st.
I was gonna say, we.
I would keep
Yeah.
that, I would really keep it at a stop until
Okay,
July 1.
perfect.
I think we need to be treating it like that we are not this entity and the port is not this entity. And this is a huge point we have been pushing for and why this bi-state group formed. And I'm just protective for our communities and us. I think it is coming from a good place, but it can land in a way that is received horribly and makes this whole project much harder when we're trying to get the support we need and stay true to why we advocated for this. So I think we need to just stop. I think it is,
Okay.
this thing starts July 1. There are other places we can be putting our energy. We have 2 open houses.
Yep.
Focus on the things that we can be working on and just, this is work for that group when they convene on July 1.
I think that's a great comment. I agree with you.
And good transition. So next topics, GR update, Washington, no updates, Oregon. Just a couple things on the bill. I have not heard today whether they came back or not.
Just translating GR. I finally got
Government
it.
relations, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
As an
Sorry.
hour ago, I checked and AP was saying that they had not returned.
Okay, so
So.
if they don't, it's
So
not
the
the end.
the 4 of the senators that had walked out had not come back
In Oregon.
in Oregon, yeah.
And the only reason I wanted to talk about that is it's not the end of our ability to get Oregon funding. If they do not come back, there is an option at the end of session for our bill to be attached to another bill. So that goes through Ways and Means, so that is still a possibility. Either way, so I just don't want everybody to think that if they don't come back, that automatically we're not getting Oregon funding. That is not the case. There is still an opportunity at the end of session for us to get money.
Just when you start talking about minting a new coin or something like that, then I'm gonna really get worried.
Yeah, no bitcoins will be used.
No, the
On the
$1
bridge.
trillion coin.
Is the Joint Transportation Committee still taking it up for a vote?
Right now, the hearing is still on for tomorrow.
So
Yes.
they can still take a vote and pass it to Ways and Means anyways, and then once it's passed Ways and Means, it's.
I don't know on the timing. If they don't come back today, if that's still possible tomorrow.
Right,
I
but
don't know. the
those
timing.
senators, that's for the floor. That's completely different, because the senators are showing up to the, their committee
Right.
stuff. They're just not showing.
The
up to
committee
the
can have
floor.
quorum without the Senate having quorum.
And that may be possible. So moving to DC, there was a question brought up about whether we wanted to go next week or not. The main points are that we will have more information on tolling. We will have more information on the Oregon funding. And we will have authority members going in July rather than by state working group. And we hopefully will have some advanced discussion around the biological opinion. And we'll probably have one more round of meetings with the tribal members between now and July. So the question is, do we want to push the meeting next week to sometime in July? And Hal is here and can give us some feedback on, I did email back and forth with him about maybe doing Zoom meetings in between now and July instead of a trip. So Hal, you want to add to anything?
Sure, thanks, Mike. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. Yeah, so Mike and I started emailing back and forth last Friday about the possibility of postponing the meeting until probably July. And for those of you on the bi-state working group that were here last July, you know how lovely the weather is then. Just brutal. But I think that there are some reasons to consider the postponing if we're going to know more about what's happening at the state legislative level by June 30, which of course we'd have to know one way or the other by that point. We do have a pretty full schedule already developed, but you know, members of Congress and their staff are never disappointed when you have to say, we're going to give you a 45-minute block of time back and we're going to postpone. So I don't think we'd have any downside there. We do have a meeting scheduled in the afternoon of Wednesday, the 24th, with all of our friends at the TIFIA office at USDOT. And I would suggest that for those of us who could still participate in that, since they oftentimes have people in those meetings by Zoom, that we could just go ahead and do a Zoom meeting to just touch base with them and let them know where things stand. Between now and July, Congress will definitely mark up the appropriation bills, and we're pending with a lot of different members, having submitted the requests for the bridge. Newhouse and Cantwell on the Senate, on the Washington side, the two Oregon senators and Blumenauer on the Oregon side. And so it does make sense for us to touch base with those offices before the appropriation bills get marked up in committee or subcommittee or full committee. And I would anticipate that that is going to be after Memorial Day. So next week's timing was good, but if we made a commitment to participate in some quick Zoom conversations, maybe 15 minutes a pop, with the various congressional offices in the week right after they come back from Memorial Recess, which is the week of June 5th, I think we'd be okay. And as it relates to preparing to ask for a discretionary grant, I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference. As Carrie and others have said, the deadline is probably going to be early August. We just want to make sure that we're having our meetings in July with USDOT and with the members of Congress before that deadline. So it's up to you. If you want to postpone, I think we can still do some useful advocacy, but do it via Zoom.
Hal, is it, do you agree with the fact, with the concept that being able to say that these folks are actual commissioners of this new bi-state authority, is there some advantage to that over, you know, saying these are commissioners from Oregon State, Washington State, counties, etc.?
It's tough to answer because I don't know how experienced those new members are going to be. You all are pretty experienced at this point, and you've got your presentations down. And I think, you know, a solid presentation is more important than the title.
Well, but if it's the same people, would the...
But if it's the same people, I think that is persuasive.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we did check, we can we can get refunds on 2 of the flights. We need to follow up on yours.
You may have to go to DC anyway.
What about the hotels? Cause that was one thought I had too, just like, are there any costs? that
Yeah, the
would be-
hotels, we had to do it within 48 hours. The hotels were good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and the flights were good.
So how, if we don't go back, do you think that that's going to reduce any of our chances with regards to the federal congressionally community developed directed spending or not?
In person is always helpful, but it's why I would definitely want to schedule some Zoom conversations. Because I think we need to thank them for submitting the requests. 5 of the 6 offices submitted the requests, and that was significant. We're not at all clear if Congress is actually going to have congressionally directed spending this year, because we're not clear if they're going to be able to have a final appropriation agreement. And if they don't, then they go to a continuing resolution, and then there are no earmarks at all in a continuing resolution. But I think we're in a pretty good position to advocate for our request, and they're all pretty solid requests. I mean, I think the lowest one, I think they're all 4 million now that I think about it. They're all $4 million. So checking in with them, I think, is important. But I do think that we can do that with a few PowerPoint slides and a couple of people having a 15-minute Zoom conversation. I especially because next week's meeting, we only had one member who has agreed to meet, and all the rest are going to be congressional staff, and that's who we'd be doing the Zoom meetings with. That member is Marie Glusenkamp Perez, which is nice, but she didn't submit a request because we didn't ask her to, because it's not her district. So she wanted to take the time to meet with you all in person. But I think if you come back in July, right after the 4th of July, then we'd have a better chance of meeting with some of the members of Congress. Next week's just kind of a brutal week, and the senators have not figured out if they're going to be in town or not. So they're mostly, well, they're all saying they're going to be gone and they're not going to be here, so they're not taking meetings. But last week I actually had a conversation with Senator Murray, and she said she thought they were going to cancel the congressional recess for the senators next week, but they haven't done that officially yet. So, but as a result, nobody's making any appointments with the senators themselves.
So thinking ahead a little bit, the July timeframe. Are you thinking a trip out the week of the 17th?
Congress is in session. They come in on the 11th, and they're here. That's a Tuesday. They come Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of that week. The next week, the week of the 17th, they're here Monday to Thursday. And the following week, they're here the 25th through the 28th. So they actually have 3 weeks there where they're doing a fair amount of work. And that's typically a very busy time for Congress. I would recommend that we schedule a trip in July. The earlier, the better. Either the week of the 11th or the week of the 17th. I wouldn't wait until the 25th because that's pretty late, and we would be bumping right up against probably an appropriate, a deadline for a discretionary grant application.
So when did we say the first
The 10th,
new authority?
the 10th.
The 10th.
So we
Oh, that's good.
we
Have
could
the
either
first
do the
meeting on
5th.
the 10th and
And
then
then get on the
hop on a
plane.
plane.
Yes. Sounds.
Welcome to the new board.
Well, I just, so I feel like a theme continuing. But, again, we're operating then under an assumption that that trip is already staffed, that we already know who those commissioners are and that they're going, which back to what we
You would-
just
well,
talked about, I don't know that we know that.
You
and
would
so
know by the 20th of June who the new members
Yeah.
were.
And
So
We know by the 20th.
we could then pull that group and see and say, hey, we think we should go
Yeah.
back this period. You'd have almost a month.
Yeah.
But I think.
But we don't know, like, looking at the calendar now, I agree with
Right,
that, like,
we
we're
don't know
comfortable with
who's
that, but I
available.
think for what we're weighing. You know, and especially it's helpful to hear from Hal, because, coming into me, it was like, well, whatever's gonna make the most sense for the project, I think is what we do. Obviously, like, this trip was already kind of accounted for, so I also think. If there had been strong arguments for still going, it seemed like none of it wasn't like there was consideration because somebody's schedule shifted, so. The other way I could see it is that this is the chance for some of this, for this group that's been advocating for last year to go and kind of formally do a handoff of some of these faces may change, and kind of what we've been championing, we've delivered like this big deadline, we have met it. And now the next time we're in DC, there could be new faces here. And, more my concern was kind of what's going on in Oregon. Did we feel, was that going to weaken us if we were to sit down in May? And we can obviously champion the success out of Washington, but if we can't sit there and confidently hint at money coming from Oregon, then maybe that was a disadvantage. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I really defer to just whatever's going to be best for the project. And if that's keeping this meeting and figuring out the 2 times a year, it's a late summer trip, which sounds like what Hal was saying. I don't.
In terms of who attends the meeting in DC, having mayors and commissioners from the 2 states and 3 cities and 2 counties present under those auspices it doesn't have to be under the auspices of these are by state bridge authority,
Yeah, that's true,
or this is the by state authority. I'm not worried about that myself. Because I think we'll continue to bring people who are local representatives.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, the timing is good for next week for the appropriation cycle. But if you all decide that you would rather come in July, I would prefer June, but if if we're postponing because we want to find out what happens at the Oregon State Legislature, then we're postponing till July. And then we just have to follow up on appropriations the best we can between now and the first week after Memorial Day with the congressional staff. Yes.
How important is it to know where Oregon's gonna finally land?
I think it's critical for the discretionary grant application, but probably not critical for consideration of our pending appropriation requests. And you're going to know that one way or the other by the grant application. So that's where the critical nature, I don't think the senators or House members are going to say yes or no on the appropriation request based on what Oregon's legislature does.
Because I think we've got other really good updates to provide.
Yeah.
For a trip next week. The only downside I saw going was not knowing about Oregon.
I feel like we're building this pyramid of funding and building that without Oregon weighing in. It feels terrible to me. But I understand that it may not happen this year. It's frustrating.
But I also think that it may not happen, but if we had the trip next week, you don't know that it hasn't happened. So you're hopeful.
That's an excellent point.
Actually, that's a good
point.
point.
That's
true.
We can be very optimistic.
No, I think that's.
Yeah, you can be really optimistic next week.
I mean, it does speak, like, it does keep the theme of the updates that we are giving, which is all of the activity that's currently happening. And it does allow us to stay on a side of offense and optimism. And then whoever inherits the trip for the second part of the year.
So I guess the only thing that matters to me is if we're looking at $8 million potentially congressionally directed spending, is it worth our time to go back and continue advocating for that? And to me, that's a big enough chunk of change for this new bridge authority that it makes sense. Even though I'd rather not go.
I mean, that is a good point, especially recognizing those offices and the way that they helped and have now put themselves forward with how we're working for that request. That is a good,
Yeah, I think
Already
I'll
in
just change my
favor.
mind.
yeah.
Well, the other thing is, if we go next week, it could take a little load off the new body.
Yeah.
That they show up and you're on the plane tomorrow. And by the way, don't screw it up.
I guess the question is if we go next week and that's all about the CDS spending, are we going to go in July or not? To push for our big grant program?
Well, or would we go later? That's a good
Could
point
go-
too,
I
because
think
if
you
the
could go
notebooks
a
are
little
coming out in
later.
June.
Yeah.
I
couldn't
think
that-
you could go later, but so much depends. You want to get a trip in before the deadline of the discretionary grant application. But if you came next week, we're getting a trip in on that. And so you've touched that base and we've had that conversation. And then hopefully we're going to have, for the discretionary grant application, hopefully we'll say Congress has $8 million pending for this project in congressionally directed spending. And Washington moved forward in their biennium, $15 million. And Oregon is whatever Oregon's going to be. But that's not, yeah.
Well, and we can also say that there's been a decision, strong opinion on raising the local tolls to be able to create, TIFIA reserves and all the rest of that. So that's some other good news.
Mhm.
And then as far as the MOAs with the tribes, I think we've made some pretty good progress there since the last time we've been out. And the biological assessment as well, even though it's not going as fast, but it's going. So I think the more I think about it, going after the big grants, we're going to be meeting with transportation, right, on Wednesday afternoon. I think the message could be, hey, we listened to you last year. We've learned a lot. Here's some of the things that we've tightened up on. And we fully intend to go after that application later this summer. And then plan another trip for in the fall as they're churning through that. To again.
Yeah, I think it sounds like we have a decision. I think you got there.
So we're going next week.
That's what.
Did we cancel any of those tickets?
We didn't cancel anything. We just,
Okay.
everybody's waiting for the button after this
Unless
meeting.
It was accidentally like.
Nobody hit send yet.
It does, one question too, Al, because it just jumped out as you were having, sharing your thoughts, Mike. Last time we were with Build America, one of the meetings we've had with them, they really were emphasizing our benefit cost analysis, and we've done so much work on that now. Is that something, it seems like that might be a beneficial talking point
Absolutely.
too.
Yeah.
To give them some insight into how, and also to maybe like workshop it. There's no flow out yet. If we're sharing kind of how we're thinking about that, maybe it gives us good insight for those applications on narrative.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, because that's the feedback we got that was our weakest link.
And that's not,
Go ahead, Kevin.
Did you want to share with Hal the new information you've received in the state regarding the labor agreements?
Yeah. When we went to Salem the other day, we kind of got chastised a bit. And what we thought we were promoting, which would have been a good idea, turned out to be a bad idea. And that's a labor agreement, project labor agreement, and i.e. tying ourselves to organized labor.
Mhm.
That went over like a lead balloon on the Republican side.
Got to what floor you're on.
So we've been strategizing internally that going forward, the message is all options are on the table. And we're looking for the best deal. So as we go out for contracting, we welcome all bidders, whether you're open shop or covered. And we'll let the finances decide.
Well, it's interesting because of course I had to rush out on Wednesday, so I didn't get to do the debrief with you guys, but my takeaway when the PLAs came up was that it's actually a topic we do not need to be engaging in. We're not at that point of this project, but I also would push back a little bit and say, we should be true to what we think is going to be the best way forward for this project. And I think we've already presented as the Bi-State Working Group having some conversations with labor industry. But I think when it did come up, it was almost self-initiated on our end. There wasn't a specific question to us that
We
was.
got additional feedback that we should not have an opinion on that.
Yeah, I think it's a space that for this point, it is not
It was,
like immediately in front of us.
I agree with you totally, but the lessons learned there, we did find out, and I got a personal phone call
I'm not surprised by that, just,
from not who you think it
Oh.
was. It was somebody else who said that if you continue down that path, I will pull my support for this project. And apparently the same thing is happening on I-5 and the Abernathy Bridge. So at least in the state of Oregon, that's a hot potato.
Hmm.
Which I agree with you, we don't have to
yeah,
to address that. The reason for it was to try and show that we're thinking bigger. We're looking for personnel development,
yeah.
workforce development and so on. Well, that didn't land very good. And what I thought they were upset at wasn't what they were upset at.
On the flip side, that line of discussion has landed very positively with the Biden administration. When
Yeah, I
we-
mean, I guess I would say like, where, one, well, there's separate all that, and what do we think is important for the project, but what we really think is important is getting the project funded.
Right.
So where the funding decisions are being made in the current administration, and even the majority still in Oregon, I think do receive projects that are prioritizing those components that ensure livable, workable wages, and so as best as we can, where I think in a dynamic currently that exists in Oregon, we can not have to engage in it is probably like the beneficial
That's a smart way to do it.
area.
But
If we had to engage, maybe it would be good to get some talking points flushed out that can allow us to stay as neutral as possible or back, pull away from having to engage in that.
Well, I think I fixed it with the individual who called me. And he
Good, you
was,
sent them some cookies and
yeah,
that were homemade.
So I guess though, we've already got letters of support from the industry. We've already stated that that's the direction we're going.
Yeah, how do you do that?
We've already looked at the contractors that have been interested, and all of those are PLA shops.
Right.
So if one person pulls it, but we're able to get funding from federal because of it, I hate to tell you which way.
Yeah, exactly.
Go.
Yeah, I don't.
Well, I think that's where
no, I
our,
think what Marla said was, in my mind, right.
Yeah,
Just don't bring
volunteer.
it up.
Yeah.
Just let it out there.
Or don't bring it up. I don't focus on it with one side, but you can still focus on it with the other.
Yeah.
And if they ask, be honest about it. Be like, all the shops that showed up for our interviews that were interested are all labor shops, so.
Yeah, that's actually one of the strong.
That's the easiest thing to say.
It's because it's
It's a
already,
mute point, yeah.
Well, it was interesting, one of the individuals we're talking about, and we're off cycle here a little bit, is that they were interested in, well, why can't you have both on the same project? And I said, that works if you can segregate the work. You don't want them working side by side. That's typically a disaster. But I said, on our project, if you wanted to do that, the obvious choice is the turnabout and the approach on the Washington side could be one. The bridge and this side could be a second one. There's no separation there.
Okay, so it sounds like you're coming next week.
yes.
Okay.
There,
all right,
Good
perfect.
work.
We will continue to press Newhouse and Murray for meetings, and the others are set up. And do know that most of the meetings are with staff, but I think on the appropriation side, that is fine because that's where the power is right now. I mean, they had the final conversations with their bosses about, okay, you submitted 20 requests, which are the 5 you really want? And we wanted to make sure that we're on that list. And you being here next week is going to help that.
It's good to meet with the government while there still is a government.
Yeah, that's true. You know, if it all breaks down, June 1st, who knows what's happening?
Well, then Oregon and DC can all be in the same boat.
All right. I'll see you all next week.
All right, thanks, Al.
All right, see ya.
All right, so the next topic is the open houses that are coming up. We have the first one, March 31st in Washington at the library. One thing we did need some feedback on was who is planning to attend that event.
So what date did you say?
May.
May.
May 31st. I said March,
What time is
sorry,
it at?
May 31st.
That's the one in the Washington.
It's
side.
Washington Side Library, 4:30 to 7.
White Salmon Library.
I'll be there.
I'll be there late.
I can be there.
Okay, perfect. We'll make sure everybody gets the information. We are planning a dry run.
Yes.
So we'll make sure all of you are in that dry run to.
So
go every.
are there other city officials not part of the bi-state working
That's
group?
what if you know of other ones that are attending, I was
But
thinking
Christine-
tomorrow that we would get the commissioners
Yeah.
to tell us.
I think some of our council will be there, would
Okay.
welcome the chance to be there in a way if we wanted to also use them, but also would come just out of, for their own interest.
So
So
would it be-
however we want to tell them to come.
When we set up the dry run, is it all right if we set it up with you all and then if you want to have some of your other counterparts there to kind of hear the message and the frequently asked questions and all of that, you can ask them to attend and,
And if we need to have new text for folks.
yeah.
Yeah,
They'll, they
coordinate
can let
who
us know.
that is.
great.
I think we were thinking about 15 boards.
Yeah,
Okay.
hopefully less,
Okay.
I'm hoping to get it down.
Do you want to tell them a little, well, you guys know. what
It's
they're
not that
about.
big of a
I was
group.
gonna say, tell you about the facilities, but you all know what they are. so.
Let's do the Oregon side. That's.
So Oregon is June 7th. It's at the Maze Street Elementary School gym. So who is planning to attend that one?
I can certainly make it.
Randy,
Good, because I
4:30,
cannot.
Arthur,
Okay.
I'm not gonna.
Same time.
Just double check.
same time,
Like you're coming to the
4:30
meeting.
to 7.
Yeah.
Great.
It was June 7th.
Yeah, June 7th works fine for me.
I should be able to
Arthur
make that.
Grant,
I'm sorry, what's the time again?
4:30 to 7. Jake, you're
I'm a maybe.
maybe, all right, and Mayor Kiewit,
I can probably come to part of it. I can't come to the whole
Okay.
time of that one.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, and then tomorrow, Kevin, you can check with the commission and we'll get that list. And
Yeah, I
then
think
we'll do the same
Ben
thing.
Shepherd will be there on the 7th, and Christie will represent on the 31st.
Perfect.
Just in that gym room, it's going to be difficult for me because I'll be reliving the trauma of having to speak to 500 children on the Dr. Seuss's birthday.
Yeah, that's.
Do you know how terrifying it is to have 500 little kids staring
Looking
at
at
you
you.
while you're speaking?
I'll bring you some green food to see, at home.
The open houses and the input period, I'm not gonna take a comment period because we are not taking comments, we're just taking input. Will be on the 14th. So on June 14th, we will close down the inputs. They will summarize that up. If we're moving the meeting to June 26th,
It's
how
still,
does
the
that
online
affect
open house
anything?
will
It'll
still
still close
close
on the 14th, but on the 26th, we'll give you a briefing on the output of that, but we need that one.
Yeah. we got
We
a
still
problem.
have to have the
So-
whole, like, what public input we get on the 2 tolling packages prepared for the court meeting on the 20th.
That's
So
right.
you all will get a summary of that feedback prior to that meeting with the court.
So we will need, how do you want to get a recommendation? Do we want to do a special meeting or can we do it by email since?
Well, the working group can do email for now.
So would you all be okay with making a recommendation to the port on the tolling option? Through email, or do you want to have some type of special meeting before the 20th?
Could we
to
do
discuss that.
a Zoom special meeting?
You wanna do that? Yeah,
Should we,
however you wanna do it.
I'm just thinking back to the other
Yeah.
timing issue of June about the amendment or the contract. Should we just slide the June meeting to like June 12th? Or no, wait, I'm sorry, that's still before the closing
Yeah.
date, when you'll have it.
We'll
Okay.
be able to give like preliminary feedback, or this is where the public's leaning, but it would be nice to be able to actually, for us to be able to,
Yeah.
with confidence, say, this is where the public is leaning.
So you're gonna know by the 20th.
14th.
By the
14th,
14th.
we'll know by the 14th, we won't have we're gonna be summarizing it as we go, but we hope to have like a summary prepared a few days after the 14th.
Okay,
And the 20th is the
Court meeting.
court.
so do we wanna do something like early in the day on the 20th? Or does that seem? Oh, no, wait, look at that, that's a commissioner meeting day.
Could we do a Zoom call on the 19th?
It's Juneteenth, so it is a,
It's, everybody
state
was on
holiday.
holidays, that's why we moved the meeting.
So, but we're getting together on the 26th.
Right.
Right, but we have to make a recommendation to the court
Further meeting.
to implement so that they can
Oh, cause it'll.
make a motion to implement the actual,
well, for the timing of
to get
actually getting it.
everything ordered and
Gotcha.
everything ready.
Okay.
To have it impact, if you still want it to take effect on September 1st.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we could do something like the 15th or
Well, if you shared the information.
Yeah.
And then there was I guess the other part was if
The
we
morning
had
of
a
the
Zoom on the 20th, but there was a conflict for some and they could share their thought. I don't know.
Can
I
we
guess
do
it's
a
kinda
short short Zoom meeting on the 16th on the Friday? The 16th.
Yeah, it could be a 5-minute
Great.
meeting.
And for
Okay.
what it's worth, the port is working June 19th. We don't have that date off, so staff will be available.
Yeah, I'd rather not schedule something for that day.
I'd like,
19th.
could we do the 16th, a 15-minute Zoom call?
I think that's
And then
fine.
get it done in 5?
Okay, something early afternoon.
We can't even open a meeting in 5 minutes. Like, and Marlo's 10 late to it anyway. so.
I did
Tell me, send my invite for 10 early.
All right, so early afternoon on the 16th, like 1 o'clock, 1:30, something like that on
That's-
Friday.
It's like 1:20.
1:20 for
Okay.
you, yeah.
Yes,
For you.
I did a 52-second city council meeting once, that's a special meeting, so it can be done.
Mike wasn't there.
Mike was not there.
Okay, so on the 16th, we'll do a Zoom call for specific just for the tolling, and then we will do. We might as well just do both of those, the amendment and the toll that on the
Do both.
16th, do them
Yeah.
both, okay.
okay, and we'll get the data
Set
to
a
talk
time or you're
about.
going to.
on the
We'll set one,
16th
we'll set
on when.
Looking at 1:30, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
When will we get the data that we talk about on the 16th?
You probably will get raw data on the 16th. We're gonna have to crunch everything as quickly as possible, because it doesn't close until the 14th. So that gives me one day to summarize. all
Say
of it.
24 hours a day.
Uh-huh,
The morning of the 16th, you'll get the polling stuff.
yeah.
The only.
It's not gonna take us,
She
We'll
used
just
ChatGPT
remind
to,
everybody, the only
review
thing.
all the stuff, give you
Well,
sentiment.
The only thing that we're doing on the polling is deciding which scenario.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that the public is gonna have a very strong opinion one way or the other. I don't think it's gonna end up a 50-50 split.
You'll have a strong
So-
opinion no matter what situation it is.
Yeah, so I think that will be a fairly straightforward discussion.
okay,
So. Okay.
Yep.
All right. We talked about the infra rural mega, looks like it's coming out in June. SS4A is out, so we're working on that. We're also working on some of the base information and write up on the other grants we're based on last year's and then the improvements we're making with the BCA. We also did some outreach to the freight community. We had a meeting on Friday. We've got another one on Thursday, just getting some better input of the impacts of the bridge on their businesses to make sure we're capturing that correctly. So we are still working on them. It's not like we're not working on them. The DOL labor grant, I sent an email out about that. That requires a match and it may even require someone else taking the lead. Do we want to continue to pursue that? Grants, it could be, I think, 2 million, Gary's still on.
Up to.
I think it was up to 2 million, but it needed at least a 20% match.
And what is this one targeted to?
It's a Department of Labor grant for like apprenticeships, or I think we think it could be used for even tarot. So it's supporting labor training on a project.
Okay, do they do this every year?
I don't know if
I
they
think
do
it's
this every
good,
year.
Yeah.
So Marla, you sent an email,
Oh,
couldn't
yeah.
quite follow,
Yeah.
could you explain, you seem to be emphasizing this is a good idea.
Well, I think it's a good idea, but I think some questions I had are walking into it. I'm encouraged about the program. Because I do think it aligns with what we've been talking about. Now, whether necessarily, and I guess that's one question I have back. Is this a key point where we need to separate that pursuit to a degree? Because I think if one of our entities has to come forward and be the applying group, then genuinely, I think the funds, if we get them, are going truly to that purpose and not seen as part of us trying to continue to fill up the funding
Well, I think no
stream that we
matter-
need to just continue operations. And so if that isn't why we'd be pursuing, I mean, not that I'm saying we'd pursue it and not do it, but just if there was a maneuvering of that cash flow, then
I think no matter what, the way the grant was written, they have to go to that. The money is
Yeah.
only allowed to go towards. Like, I'll call it labor training. It's a little broader than that, but.
so where it was interesting to me, if that's true, and where now it is interesting. Is because they've split the program into two things. There's planning, and then there's one that's about expanding an existing program, which we're obviously not there at. Yeah, but I thought maybe it does help us if we were to receive some dollars that are focused on this pursuit of the planning part. To better flush out conceptually how this program would come to life for the school district and the tribes. Alongside whatever gets determined with the unions when they come on board and have existing apprentice programs. And where I thought it might blend nicely right now is on the Washington side, ESD 112 is launching across 12 rural school districts, which include 3 in Klickitat, including the White Salmon School District, a program that's bringing in different paths year by year. And so it could be that if, a Washington entity was that applying group, and the match part is the biggest part that needs to get determined.
Yeah.
And I saw Mayor Kiewit's comment, which I thought had some interest or was interesting of, well, maybe there's a way through MCED or some current bridge dollars going to be that match. I don't know if that then means you'd want it to be an Oregon entity, but knowing that some of these efforts are actively underway with the Washington school districts seemed like maybe an opportunity, and not that we need to go for the maximum.
And it has to be non-federal dollars for the match.
Okay.
That was. the
And
other-
what is it, 20%?
It was, I think the minimum was 15, but it was kind of encouraging, the more you put in, the more chance you had.
Well, we
Indirectly,
could use, say, Washington State or Oregon State grant to pay for the.
I gotta go back and look on the Washington State grant funding, whether it could or couldn't be used.
How does this build
Transportation dollars.
Could be.
Well, so that's back to one of your questions. It doesn't, like I see it as one of these side parts, which we've often talked about, is this is a huge project bringing a ton of dollars into our communities. What are those ancillary project ideas that are helping our communities benefit? But I do feel like this is a fork.
Right.
Like, this is maybe
Especially-
one of many forks we'll encounter where a different entity has to say, okay, yeah, there is value and it's gonna help. It gives us the talking points we need later, helps us as we're moving forward with the true contract to the union groups that have their apprentice programs. But I also feel like it does start to feel separate from like some of the bi-state working group work. And maybe even the authority initially.
Especially some of the money that if the match is coming from money that could have been used to actually build bridge.
Well, and so then there's that too, like,
Right.
then that kind of doesn't feel great, like it
Where else
seems
do we
like
get
there should
money?
be match coming forward from somewhere else.
Right.
And then I think it is a question, the minimum, the floor is 500,000 on the opportunity
The
and the
max is
ceiling's 5 million. So then I think the consideration is now, but again, through ESD, there, that's what I'm saying. It seems like maybe if we thought there was value, there's further conversations needed to see if there are dollars that can come from a different area or entity to help flesh out that application and use it genuinely as a planning to get this idea launched and off the ground with the school districts. Because it is kind of what we've been saying, but I also am protective that I don't know that it makes sense to pull dollars that have already come for the bridge to go to this.
The way I would make the tie, and it's a loose tie, is that intuitively, there's a shortage of trained craftsmen. And this is an opportunity to help that, not only for our bridge, which we're gonna need, but all the bridges downstream and other work in the area.
The other way to tie it to the bridge is that if, and I think we're in the Warm Springs Tarot, and even with some of the apprentice programs, the project tends to have to pay some of the fees and buying the equipment and some of that stuff, the training classes, those things for the project. So there is a tie to the project and offsetting some of the project costs that will come into some of those programs that happen and that we will be using on the project.
So another way to look at this is we're not ready for the labor to pop out on the other end yet.
Right.
We're still 2-3 years away in this case. Does it make sense if this is a recurring set of grants that they have every year? Let's go get smart this year and do it
future.
next year.
We can, I don't remember in our discussions. Reddy, do you recall? I don't remember seeing whether it was recurring or not. I have to go back and look at that.
Go ahead.
I'm kind of conflicted on this, but if we can get like the Workforce Development Council to kick in the money for the portion of it, I think we can create that tie. And I know Washington has one out of Yakima. I don't know about Oregon, but you could contact our economic development specialist, Richard Foster, to see if that's a possibility then the county might be able to be that, you know, head over that. But I've also just sat through a FERC meeting, and when you're talking about, you know, bringing in labor and the labor and the tribes didn't exactly sit so well with them on that. So I want to be cognizant that you're trying to say, you know, we're going to try to get tribal members, and like, you know, this came up on solar and pump storage and all this, and it doesn't exactly go over the way that you would think it would. And so I just want to be cognizant of the possible ramifications in that situation.
Yeah, we're trying to use it as a sales plus, and if it's not really there.
But it could also shoot you in the foot. So I just want to be clear about that. And like, whenever it comes down to it, if I have a choice to spend money on the bridge or moving forward with the bridge or spend money on anything else, you'd have to be a really good sell, because I know how much we have to pay per hour just to write the assessment, or, you know, the
And that's-
application.
Well, I think that was my question too, is I think more what it is like, is this a endeavor that justifies us using staff time that's assigned to bridge efforts? Or is it something where, you know, and one of our entities or something comes forward, as Jake said, like maybe there's a tie in there through a county pursuit, or like I said, I had this meeting last week, and ESD 112, you know, their leadership is part of the regional. However, these are getting filtered back. And there is a lunch and learn coming up. And so I think it's just determining, like, is this something that stays on Mike or whomever's plate? Or are we saying, no, not yours, but collectively as our groups, maybe we continue to think through it? I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with what Marla's saying, because that's kind of where I was going with McKed too, and offering them up as a possible collaborator, because they have the ability to administer this kind of thing. And you know, they work in a bi-state capacity already. And so utilizing some of our local tools like that to get additional funds, also help our community, I think is sort of a win-win, but it wouldn't pile the workload onto the bi-state authority, the bridge authority. It would be a collaboration with another local agency.
So if we decided to go forward with this, when does this one?
I think it goes in June. We need to move pretty quickly on it, because I think it goes in
My
June.
gut feel is I don't think we're ready.
Yeah, that's what the other thing I was gonna say is I don't know that we're prepared to really get this in the right way. It'd probably be better to do some investigation this year. And then next year, put this on the list of ones to come back and
I'm good with that.
look at.
You okay?
All right.
All right,
It might be worth just, since you're looking at it, get Jessica, just Jessica Meta with, again. Let her know that that's the plan.
Okay. All right, no real changes with the other grants. Real quick on the treaty tribes, we're continuing to have conversations with them. We are going to put together a supplemental document that is gonna be some proposal mitigating terms. For the tribes, we've heard back a little bit from them through some conversations that Kana has had, that it's not just dollars they're looking for, it's things outside of that. So we are gonna look at other mitigation efforts of improving some fishing areas and some other things that may be mitigating efforts to just pure dollars for impact of fish. So once we have that sheet together, we'll circulate that around for input. We have a couple meetings coming up in June. It has been a little difficult in May, but I think that's because of their fishing season. And starting up that's caused some of that, and some of it I think is just normal travel process. Cause it's just slower, and every month I owe Jake a new lunch for the delay, so.
You betting against the project?
No,
No. There is something that did come up.
we
with
just
the
have different
tribes.
timelines in our head is
Yes.
all.
With the tribes and with our geotech borings, this just came up Thursday or Friday of last week. Our boring schedule, starting June 19th, happened to be the exact date that the tribes had decided to start their fishing season. So when we sent the coordination letter out to let them know what our schedule was, you can imagine the response that we got back. So we are gonna meet this week to talk to Herb and some others. I think we're gonna need to go sit down with BIA and CryptFic, because they have 3.5 to 4.5 day schedules. So I'm not sure if we can do it outside of theirs. And they will finish either mid-July or late July. So we may be able to do those last 3 or 4 borings outside of their window. But we're gonna go meet with them and make sure that we are not interfering with their travel fishing seasons right now. There were a lot of concerns when it was circulated that we were gonna be out there. Well, why do you have a permit? How are you doing this right on top of our fishing season? So I elevated the discussion to be very sensitive, given the bigger treaty MOAs that we are working through, to not go out there and cause any issues for geotech borings that don't.
Are you talking about splitting the work?
No, what it would be is we'd start outside of the fishing areas and do
Yeah.
the borings that would be outside of where the nets and things are at.
Yeah.
And then possibly delay a week and then come back and do the ones where the nets are after their season.
Now, does that mean we're gonna get an extra?
I will have to talk to the geotechs and the drillers about that and see what the impact is.
How did we not know when we scheduled this, that this was in the middle? of
Because they don't set their seasons until, I don't know exactly what the timing of, but it's kind of a work session for them to set the seasons, and they change every year. But it just happens that they ended up at the same time we're in there.
When does their season?
We have a permit, we have all the permits that we need. It's just a matter of the actual fishing activities being on the same date. So it's not a matter of where we could get the permit or not, it's just more like being a good neighbor and not.
Yeah, I would use this to our advantage. We're sorry. We made a mistake, we'll change it. Proves that we're willing to work with them, that we're eager to work with them, and that we're not intending to offend.
Can we not just push all of it so that we do it one time? to the
That might be
offside?
the other option. I want to, before we do that, I want
You're
to make
paying for it
sure.
to be sitting there doing nothing, that. you
Yeah,
want me to
or
wait?
a double mold. double meet.
And that's what I want to kind of find out first. I want to do a little more research into exactly what their days are. Can we squeeze it in around them without impacting anybody? If we can't, then is it easier to just leave those and do them at the very end of our work? And is there any cost to that? If not, if we have to reschedule, what's the delay in rescheduling? Because rescheduling the barges could be a few months to get back on the barge schedules. Which is not super critical to the project. It just means we won't have that preliminary geotechnical information going into the progressive selection. But the selection wasn't gonna be based on that data anyways. It's gonna be based more on qualifications. So I don't think it's super critical, and I don't think worth pushing it and causing a problem with jobs.
It's not an
I think we've kind of decided we're gonna proceed with a progressive design build.
Yeah.
But if we ended up dropping back and do a design only, you'd certainly want to have that.
Yeah, I mean, it would,
More.
we could, that
So-
informational feed.
So it's not an option to ignore the
No,
the fishing
Right.
issue here. And so it's simply a matter of staff figuring out the cheapest and most effective way to move forward if they haven't done yet.
yeah.
So I would just wait for them to figure that out.
Yeah.
I guess the only other thing is so say you're fishing not where the nets are, but you're boring out there where the barges are and they have a bad catch. Is that gonna put a bad taste in their mouth?
Yes, that,
And is that worth it to us, or would it be better to wait the couple of months and get on the barge schedule so that we don't have that issue? Because to me, the unintended consequence of a potential bad catch and getting blamed for it, that's gonna cost a lot.
no, exactly, understood. Yeah, I want to have a meeting with them and just see if there's any,
Just talk to them, what's
Mitigation.
their options, but
if there's no options.
it's
and
okay to
gonna
go
cost-
early.
Yeah, well, that,
Yeah, is that a possibility?
yes, no.
No.
No, you can't get the barges. I mean, that's the problem right now. You can't, the barge folks are, we asked earlier if we could get them earlier, and the answer was no, even before. 5 weeks. Yeah. So it may not be a big problem because it's kind of a varying window of how long it's gonna, they don't know what they're gonna run into when they do the boring, so they may have enough float in how long they were planning to be out here to be able to just extend it past their fishing window, and we might be okay.
Do we
So
know how
before we
long the
just
window
wrap
is?
it, right now, they're anticipating it being 5 weeks. The schedule for the fishing will start on June 19th, and depending on whether they pick to do 3.5 days or 4.5 days, it will go either to the middle of July or the end of July. So the fishing season has to get completely locked down. It's still not completely locked down either.
And
So
what
just-
was the overall duration of the
Borings,
borings?
5 weeks,
5 weeks?
5 weeks starting June 19th.
Well, we trust you to figure it out.
I just want to make sure you guys are aware that there may be a change to that because of this coming up, so. All right, RBMC Amendment 4, we're working through that. We're working through the RFP proposal. Geotech we talked about right away. I do have an appraisal on the Washington side, but there's always something that comes up. We're investigating a little more into the the ability to develop that piece of property, which comes back to the processes in the county and the city to approve the development. So I'm getting from our folks and the appraiser, because he couldn't finalize his appraisal without knowing exactly how much of the parcel was developable, could be developed. So I said, well, if we just assume that the whole thing can, what's the price? And then we can determine whether or not it's something we want to go investigate more to reduce that number. But that will take some time because you gotta go do some wetlands, you gotta go look at the property and see what can and can't be built on it. It may or may not be worth the effort to do that. We may spend more than what the actual appraisal price of the property is, so. It's not critical, but just so you know, there's always a little more to just going out and appraising a piece of property and buying it.
This is the piece under
This is
the,
the Washington piece under the existing bridge, or just the downstream side of the existing bridge.
did you see the picture I posted last week of that?
No, I don't know. Okay. So anyway, so that's in the works too. And then once that one's done, then we will come over and start working on the port one, which has some complexities in it too, so. But we're just trying to get some of that right away because right away does take so long, getting some of that process started and moving that stuff along. That was it.
Good report. Lot going on.
Yes.
Are we still on schedule for the RFP? That whole process?
Yes, we are gonna move some fall dates around, but we're still looking at the RFP getting out in November. And then selection, award and everything early 2024.
So I would imagine, and I know you've got this list of startup activities. This will be a big one to go on there to educate the new team
Yes,
of at least the initial strategy. Putting that thing together.
yes. All right.
Go around the room. Anything? Marla?
As a,
You okay?
yeah, as that Ron White in this town hall on the bridge came up there, and so. A constituent from Hood River mentioned that it's a thing and it's going on. There was general support from it, and the senator seemed interested, enthusiastic in his support.
Yeah, that guy's our neighbor, my neighbor.
Dale.
Anything?
No, I was just thinking what I heard Ron Wyden say in private about the bridge, but okay.
I'd like to hear that too.
I don't think I would like to hear that. I
Yeah,
got it.
because we're gonna see him next week.
Right.
Yeah,
Staff.
okay. Catherine, anything?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about when the open house is, the dry run for the open house is gonna be. Is that scheduled yet?
We haven't scheduled that, Mayor. We'll get something scheduled in the next day or so.
Okay, great, thank you.
You bet.
Okay, rest of staff? Anything? I think we are adjourned.
As they were